This BBC scandal is so serious that MPs have had to go into full crisis mode and organise an urgent meeting for tomorrow to discuss the absolute chaos that is the BBC completely disregarding its impartiality requirements because they completely doctored a Trump speech to make it sound like he incited riots, and B, they have been completely exposed for their pushing of Hamas propaganda and complete disregard for impartiality when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war. First of all, before we look at the details, let's remind ourselves of that edit they made of Trump's speech.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
That's the BBC clip.
And we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And that is reality. The BBC edit, they took one half of a sentence and they took another half of a sentence from 54 minutes later in his speech and put them together to clearly suggest that he was inciting riots when he was not. Now let's take a look at the details of this meeting, because this has gotten more serious today after we have found out all the details in the second part of this leaked memo from the Telegraph, exposing, particularly with the BBC Arabic service, the absolutely absurd level of disregard for impartiality rules when it comes to coverage of the war in Gaza, acting as though they are a Hamas mouthpiece is what it looks like. So GB News are reporting MPs will meet tomorrow, that is Wednesday, to discuss bias in the BBC after extremely worrying allegations were made about Donald Trump and the war in Gaza. Dame Caroline Dinenage, can't pronounce that properly, who chairs the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, confirmed the group will address the implications of recent revelations which highlighted that the BBC has misled viewers in a panorama programme. Dame Caroline said, at a time when trust in both politics and mainstream media is so low, our state broadcaster has an additional responsibility to ensure that it reports contentious and potentially inflammatory issues with a straight bat. These allegations are extremely worrying and come at a critical time for the BBC. The DCMS committee will meet tomorrow and will no doubt discuss the implications of this. As you can see from her statement there, she is taking this extremely seriously. The BBC, they've slipped up many times, but this is on a scale that we have never seen before. I've shown you the doctored Trump footage, which is just, that's not creating a soundbite, that is deliberately doctoring a speech to make it sound like something completely different to what he actually said. Clearly bias, and that was put out right before the election, so could have could have been an attempt to influence it. But then we've now got more information about the Hamas lies that are being spread. They've already got into trouble with that documentary, which you can see the photo of there, where they had the boy narrating the documentary who was the son of a Hamas official. That was not, they didn't tell the viewers that in the documentary. That had to be pulled off air, but it goes a lot deeper than that. Leaked dossier says corporation's Arabic service boosted terror groups' claims and minimized Israeli suffering. I'm just going to show you a few snippets of this article that has gone up, but I want to show you the end of what so Danny Cohen has written this article after this second part of the leaked memo has come out, and he is a former director at the BBC television, but this is the end of his statement, which is pretty damning. He says that the BBC has helped to push Hamas lies around the world and fueled anti-Semitism at home here in Britain cannot now be in doubt. This explosive document has shredded any pretense to the BBC's claims to be a trusted and impartial news source, and should serve as a wake-up call to the government as it embarks on charter renewal. Those responsible for overseeing this deep offence to impartial journalism should hang their heads in shame and resign. the BBC is not safe in their hands. I don't see how Tim Davie can survive this. He's overseen a lot of scandals, but this is absolutely huge, because what is exposed here is that these huge problems of inappropriate coverage at the BBC have been put in front of BBC bosses time and time and time again, and they have refused to take action and acknowledge that they are at fault. Tim Davie will have known that the coverage was not correct, was not impartial as it should be, and he chose to ignore it. Let's look at some of the details about what has been going on with the BBC Arabic service. So it chose to minimize Israeli suffering, suggests the memo. And it tried to paint Israel as the aggressor. I mean, any of us who have seen any of the BBC's coverage of this will know this. Allegations made against Israel were raced to air without adequate checks, the memo says, suggesting either carelessness or a desire always to believe the worst about Israel. Anything that Hamas said, they put it straight up there without properly checking it. Hamas death toll figures straight out there without properly checking them or clarifying to the viewers that these figures come from a terrorist organization that has an interest in increasing the death toll that we see in the news. BBC Arabic, which is funded partly by a grant from the Foreign Office, i.e. your taxes, gave large amounts of space to statements from Hamas, making its editorial slant considerably different to the main BBC website, even though it is supposed to reflect the same values. Oh, that's in the wrong place. The BBC also gave unjustifiable weight to Hamas claims about the death toll, that's what I've just mentioned, and also they incorrectly claimed that the ICJ had ruled that a genocide was taking place, which was incorrect, right? They're desperate to tell us that there was a genocide going on when, they're clearly not very good at genocide if that's what they're aiming to do, because they could have wiped out Gaza in 5 minutes if that's what they were trying to do. But yet these idiots that are meant to be at our state broadcaster, that's used to be world renowned, they've just got a complete disregard for the truth. Now let's take a look at some more of the details in this article that Danny Cohen, who was a former director for television at the BBC, and he's written a very, very damning. I showed you the end of his statement. I'm going to show you a few more details about what has been going on. He says the leaked Prescott report is a devastating document. It is an insider's account of serious and widespread failings of impartiality, systemic bias, and activist journalism spanning years of BBC coverage. It lays bare for the first time how senior BBC executives, not just some idiot interns, senior BBC executives repeatedly tried to dismiss, downplay, or excuse these failings in a total abdication of their responsibilities. That is why Tim Davie and other bosses, they are going to have to go. I don't see how they survive this. Michael Prescott is a serious and respected journalist. As an advisor to the BBC's Editorial Standards Committee for 3 years, he had regular and detailed access to evidence of the BBC's journalistic failures and groupthink, and he was begging the BBC bosses to do something about this and take his claims about the issues seriously, and they just dismissed him. Absolutely shocking. And it says that Mr. Prescott completely lost faith in the BBC's leadership, including Tim Davie, the Director General. He needs to resign. Now, BBC execs chose to hide these errors from the public rather than every news broadcaster makes a mistake sometimes, but then you're supposed to make an announcement and write the record. They have decided to bury it at the BBC. They have chose to mislead license fee payers. Now I want to show you some of the details about some of the journalists that BBC Arabic were employing. So the Telegraph revealed earlier this year the poisonous anti-Semitic social media posts of some journalists that are regularly used by BBC Arabic But the BBC didn't put their hands up and say we've made a mistake, we shouldn't have hired these people. They downplayed the role of these people, said that they were just eyewitnesses, not members of staff. But actually, some of these people who said horrific things were employed a heck of a lot of times by the BBC. So one of these journalists, Sama El-Zanen, who called on social media for Jews to be burnt as, quote, Hitler did, appeared on BBC Arabic how many times? 244 times in less than 2 years. Not exactly someone who's not a member of staff, not anything to do with you. Absolute lies from the BBC. Next, Ahmed Alaga described Jews as devils and Israelis as less than human. He appeared 522 times on BBC Arabic during the same period of less than 2 years. That's absolutely shocking. Okay, and another thing, okay, that's going on with BBC Arabic is that they covered a story of a Yazidi sex slave being rescued from Gaza. They allowed 600 words of that article to include a Hamas statement denouncing the woman and calling her a liar. Okay, you might say this is what Hamas have said, right, and give them a bit of space, but to give them that much coverage in an article, what's very clear at the BBC is even if they technically cover all of the stories, is that they give a far bigger weight to certain voices, i.e. a far bigger weight to the Hamas voice. This is absolutely damning, and I'm just showing you a snippet here. This goes further and further. You can look at this on the Telegraph website. Loads of examples of where the BBC, they've buried, deep down in the website. The front page on the BBC is clearly not just whatever the most popular article is. No. They clearly intentionally make some articles way more prevalent than other articles on their website and in their coverage to push a certain narrative. I think this is really serious for the BBC. As I told you at the beginning of this video, there is an emergency meeting happening with MPs tomorrow. Tim Davie is going to have to go. I know the BBC have seen a lot of scandals, but this is really damning. Also, the Trump saga. I believe Trump sued one of the news channels, I think it might be in CNN, for $13 million for inappropriate coverage. Could he do the same for the BBC? And I expect Trump, he's going to be very ticked off about this, and he might say, if Tim Davie doesn't go, I'm going to sue. Something is going to happen. So we'll see what happens at this meeting tomorrow and what happens to Tim Davie over the coming days. Make sure, if you haven't already, you hit the subscribe button down below, because of course I'm going to be keeping you all updated on what is going on with this scandal. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chloe Dobbs.